But at the same time in this book, I wasn't saying that here's the way, that here's the answer. What I did say, what I thought was the answer was honest science and honest communication about science. And that generally is a value you think people will embrace. So that is a stance that opens the door to discussion, I think, because you're saying we need to know this information. And most people will recognize the value of thinking about long-term outcomes. And most people will say it is a good value to have open discussion. And I'm saying to everybody, let's look at this and figure out what we'll do. And it's also sort of like I'm saying this is a collective responsibility. It's a social responsibility to take care of people. And we can't do that well unless we have this discussion and an honest discussion. So I think that's why it's having some impact. And I'm going around speaking. I've been on the road now for a year. And that's really, when I talk, I don't say, and here's what we should think. I say, here is some data, here's some information that does sort of show the need to have the conversation, because what it shows is that what we're doing right now isn't really working, and frankly that the discussion we're having now, or the belief we're having now, is at odds with the science. But then I just say, okay, but now we need to have a discussion and say what next. So I think it's a delivery that is respectful of everybody, and that everybody has a stake in this and values their input, and also says, and it's our collective responsibility. So I think that's what stirs the discussion.
I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I work with a lot of psychiatrists, and I don't think any of them is interested in harming their patients whatsoever. And so I'm a little bit puzzled after this day what your agenda really is. Yeah.
Two parts on this. One part, my agenda is to make this information known, and the expectation is then people of goodwill that'll engender a societal discussion about what we do differently. And is this current paradigm of care working, or do we need to do something differently? And really it comes with the expectation of people are of goodwill, we want to do best by other people, and this could be a starting point. So if I have an agenda, this would be a starting point for a discussion. And then when we talk about psychiatry as a whole, in some ways I think you need to just make a bit of a distinction. There are plenty of practicing psychiatrists who of course have nothing but a desire to help people get well. But then there's also really a research psychiatry, an academic psychiatry that has a lot of financial influences on them, career advancements, and they really get invested in a certain story. And then they'll defend that story as well, even when maybe the research literature is telling them to amend that story or to do something differently. But if you want to know my agenda is that we have this idea that science and evidence-based should guide discussions. And what I've tried to bring here today, and also in the book, is this information that's in the research literature to the fore, with the idea that it can engender a larger societal discussion about what do we do better, how do we change. And again, in many instances I've been asked to give presentations just to psychiatrists. So there's many well-meaning psychiatrists, even in academic psychiatry, that want to confront this information. But anyway, that's how I think we go forward. One thing as I was trying to go through the antipsychotics was people don't see this. The clinician doesn't see this data. The clinician doesn't see this sort of long-term course. It's hidden. The clinician actually is seeing that the medications work short-term, and that when people come off, they do very poorly. And what science here is really illuminating is an extraordinary paradox. And I actually think it's an extraordinary tale of scientific discovery to show something that's not immediately apparent to the clinician. And then the question is, how do people respond to that? And one of the problems is, if you start organizing a society's response to psychiatric distress around, say, one paradigm of care, it becomes very hard to switch to another paradigm of care because you don't have alternatives, you have financial forces, etc. And all I'm saying is, if change is going to happen, you've got to invite everyone into the discussion. And you've got to start with a sense of people are of goodwill and try to go forward from that point.